thought I was dead, didn't you? You were wrong. Space. The final frontier. These are the voyages of the U.S.S. Adequate. Our ongoing mission, until we are cancelled and replaced by something far superior. To review every episode and movie of Star Trek in existence. To seek out new guests and make them very uncomfortable. To boldly go where very many other Star Trek-based YouTube shows have gone before. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Treks and Trekkers, and welcome to Trekking Up North Live! We are back, baby, after a little 2-week hiatus because of scheduling issues and the fact that we are all monumentally exhausted.
His fault. His fault.
I'm a ghost. I'm a spooky ghost.
Shut up! I am your host, Captain Goodwill, and joining me, as ever, is the delectable Geesian from the planet Honk! But more importantly, Mr. Gay UK MX Drag runner-up Science Officer Synoiz!
Hello, the people's champion.
The people's princess.
The people's pimp.
And I
Don't go to France.
I would have won it too if it wasn't for
meddling
not
with
being
kids.
20 and skinny. But,
and it seems to me you lived your life like a drag queen in the wind.
like a drag queen in the dark.
I'm sure Princess Diana would have voted for you. I'm sure of it.
I love how, like, are we even going to explain the fact that I'm just randomly looking like Voldemort in a dark room? It's like,
No, we're just
very much like sort of what is it called?
If Voldemort
Department of
entered
Mysteries
Austria
vibe right now,
if Voldemort was born in Austria and moved to Germany in the 30s,
he's a German Hully.
roads, damn it!
He's Hully from Red Dwarf.
Oh. Did I
dudes.
ever tell you about that? That literally, I think just before I started with Nerdy Up North, I did like a drag performance where the show was basically a futuristic one, and they wanted me to be the ship AI. So we basically did me as Holly. So it's me as a disembodied head, basically doing all the stuff like coming up between all the performances and stuff. And it was really fucking stupid, and I loved it.
we are also joined.
I am staying at a friend's house today, so basically because we're both going to a show in the middle of nowhere. Be up at like 6 a.m. to get into drag, so I'm like going, yeah, I'm gonna stay over, and we didn't want to move people around again, so determined to do a live episode. But I do look like I'm on the set of Most Haunted, about to get touched by Yvette Fielding.
And many men would not object to that. However, Derek Okara may come back and go, Mary. And joining us is the cult. Joining us
loves dick.
Water is wet. Joining us as ever. As
ever.
Joining us is the cult leader of Nerdy Up North itself.
Well, am I some kind of like a villain for Trek? Is it like can I be like the Romulan, or can I be like the Borg or something more, like quite interesting that way?
To be
Sub-Commander Paul.
Sub-Commander
to Paul.
Vibe.
Sub-Commander to Paul.
Go on, we'll get you in the cat suit.
We'll get you in a castle. We'll get you pointy.
He fucking needs to see that now.
Yes, we do. Yes. Photoshop Lee, do your thing. It's Paul from Nerdy Up North, everybody. How are you today, Paul?
I'm not bad. I was like last week, I was all excited because I had my old little notorious plan to retire and get out of the podcast game. But you just keep bringing us back. Damn it! You keep bringing us back into the fire.
Well, you say that, but you have been a very busy boy over the last few weeks, haven't you? Because you've been in the background like a little womble, negotiating, trading, and being just a general Wolf of Wall Street, or Wolf of Wall's End, as we'll call it. Because Nerdy Up North is doing something. Nerdy Up North is doing something very special, isn't it, Paul?
Very scary, shall we say?
What are we doing?
Yes, we're doing a lot of different things, but yes, we are. We can actually put in our CV that Nerdy Up North is kind of in cooperation or working with HBO in a way. So everyone can write that down in the CVs now. Like, get it on your LinkedIn profiles. It's official. Well, it's going to be official when I sign the contract. God damn it, Ghost. But yes, we are basically collaborating, or I'm not going to use I hate the term, even though they've put this in the contract. We are being influencers for Heritage Auctions lot, where they're selling off all the good shit from Game of Thrones. You can get all the swords. You can get Jaime Lannister's codpiece. We are actually going to be doing videos where we're trying to measure how many Chris's can fit in the Mountain's armor. So far, we've got about 17,000, but still, it's still growing. We still haven't filled it. But yeah, and we might be going to a soiree down London to meet the guests as well. So not the guests, the cast from Game of Thrones, whoever turns up. Now, it could be a soldier from the right next to Jon Snow, or it might be Emilia Clarke. Who knows? It could be quite scary. But I'll tell you what, though, if Jason Momoa is there, I'm having a pint with him.
A pint of what?
Probably Guinness. He is a very Guinness drinker. But to be fair,
I
though,
think you would get a pint out of him. Just saying.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I will never forget that. My most famous meme is Jason Momoa. He goes, "Hello, my name's Jason. This is my mower," and he's pointing to a lawnmower. But yes, it's incredibly exciting. A huge opportunity for Nerdy Up North, and of course, everyone knows HBO stands for Humongous Bodily Odor. We are incredibly humbled and grateful for Heritage Auctions for some reason allowing us to venture down south, despite the fact we are Nerdy Up North. We are venturing beyond the wall end.
It was quite funny though. The email I got was like, "How far are you from London?" I was like, "Depends what you want me to do."
I think
Put it this way: I would ask where the big woman is.
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously, London doesn't quite understand that the rest of the country exists, so they were just like, "So this north you speak of, like, where is that? Perhaps, you know."
Yes. So yeah, I was like, "Yeah, it's kind of up there. It might take us a few hours." Like, all right then.
It might take us a few hours.
Just sign this bit of paper, then we'll tell you what you'll be doing. I was like, "So I'm signing my life away before you're actually telling us what we're doing." So yeah. But
that's the joy of NDAs.
It's the joy of NDAs. But we are here not to talk about Game of Thrones. We are here to talk about another amazing franchise, Star Trek, of course.
Oh shit! Shall I go now?
Pissed.
Finally, after so bloody long, because we were supposed to do this in July, but unfortunately we had all these conventions to do because we're just jet setters. We are finally here to review Star Trek VII Generations. And this is Paul's favourite Star Trek movie, and I can understand why, because this movie gets a lot of flack. Unnecessarily, I was
going to say, especially by that guy there, Graham. Like, I watched the last episodes. He was a nasty bastard. So, yes.
I hate everything.
He hates the light at the moment. He's transcended. He's worked that hard. He has transcended this mortal coil and dipped into the void to regenerate.
Just because I'm sitting here like a gay Nosferatu doesn't necessarily mean that I'm like only full of hate.
Just be careful if Sirius's black hand starts reaching back to pull through. Yes.
Just sitting here with my best Death Eater look on. But I might be sitting in the Nexus right now. I might be in a place of pure joy, I think, right now.
Just darkness and emptiness, I wish.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you were when we last spoke about Generations, you weren't that much of a fan. However, I understand, Science Officer Synoiz, that opinion may have changed today. Would I be correct in assuming?
Who told you that? Oh shit, I sent you a voice note, didn't I?
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, how do you know this? The only person I've known to is Andy. But no, I will say it is actually amazing. It's yeah, no, it has totally changed. The problem I have with a lot of the Star Trek films, because I'm not like I don't like the Trek films as much as I like the series.
Mhm.
because obviously, like the films have to ramp up the action way more, and they have
Mhm.
to be more sort of compressed. I have a bad opinion of almost all of them because all I remember is that it wasn't as nuanced as the series.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
then when I rewatch them, I'm like, nope, I don't remember this at all, or
Mhm.
I totally remember this wrongly. And that's
Mhm.
exactly what happened with this one. It was the fact of like, this is actually brilliant. This film is
Mhm.
actually brilliant. The only thing that I find a bit weird is Kirk seems slightly shoehorned in, like in a
Yeah.
weird way. And I know they did it deliberately to have the crossover, but it was
Mhm.
just weird kind of going, it kind of has him at the beginning, and then it seems to just forget about him. And then at the end, it's like, oh, piss, we forgot about it. Oh, bring him in. We'll do a
This
thing.
I thought that was like a brave decision though, because normally when you go through like a transition movie, and this in essence is for Star Trek, the transition from like the old Trek to the next generation.
Mm,
I kind of give us a glimpse of it, where most movies or like franchises would have give you half the movie with Kirk, then the other half moving into the Picard, but you don't.
yeah.
It's kind of like you just get the snippets and a little tease of old Kirk. And to be fair, he moves sprightly for his age. I'll give him his due, even though it probably was a stumped double. Give him his due. But yeah, I think as a transition movie goes, because a lot of places have a lot of franchises have tried, like
Mm.
Star Wars, for example. Other type of franchises have tried the same thing and failed miserably. This one does it really successfully and quite naturally in a way. It doesn't feel forced, but yes.
this is
I think it is. This movie kind of redeems Sirius Kirk because
Mm,
obviously anyone who watches the show will know that I'm not a fan of Captain Kirk in the actual series because
mm,
obviously dated opinions and stuff. But it's the fact of in the films I realized that I only enjoyed him when he was comedy. I only
Mhm.
enjoyed him when it was basically like, oh look, it's a funny movie and silly things
mm,
are happening and he's got loads of quips and stuff. But when he's actually being the serious Kirk that like everyone else likes. I was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure about that. And then this film basically gives him the best possible send off for his character by
mm,
having Sirius Kirk and making him like really, really likable and making
mm,
him really endearing. And yeah, it is. It's basically like it saves Kirk as a serious character. It doesn't dwell on him too much, kind of thing, and it
mm.
introduces all of the next gen cast. And yeah, I just think it's the perfect transitionary film. You know.
open. I mean, this is weird though because this is a transitionary film after 7 years of the next generation. This is
Hmm.
handing over the torch 7 years after the torch has already been handed over. Now,
That's it.
all the
It's
way, all the way
relighting it. They got
through,
a little
yeah,
lighter out. They got
well,
one of those
all the way
little
through,
sparky things, and they're like,
all the way through
But
the next generation. We started with episode two, part two,
mhm,
Capture at Farpoint. We had Leonard McCoy. So we had DeForest
mhm,
Kelly in the first pilot episode. We then had Leonard Nimoy as Spock
mhm,
in Unification,
Scotty.
and then we had Scotty.
mhm,
So all the way along, people will go, well, where's Kirk? What's happened to Kirk? What's going on with Kirk?
Hmm.
Obviously, 91, we had Star Trek 60 Undiscovered Country, the crew retired, but there was still
mhm,
that demand for Kirk. Generations is. We talked about Star Trek Five, about how many problems Star Trek Five had during production. We had the Writers Guild of America strike. We had issues with ILM because ILM were busy working on other major motion pictures, so they couldn't do the special effects. Yada yada yada.
Hmm.
Generations had issues across the board. It had
mhm,
issues with writing, it had issues with costumes, it had issues with special effects, it had issues with test screening. And
mhm.
they overcame this in the best possible way. And it is considered to be one of the most divisive films in the Star Trek community purely because of what happens to Kirk at the end.
Yeah.
Um, and to have a transitional, people consider that this is a transitional moment for Star Trek in terms of the movies.
Yes,
Because,
that's probably what I meant as well, like
yeah,
the transition,
Hmm.
because like as you said, use are hardcore fans, use go into it as a thing, but the general public, they'll probably, as I said, not have seen much of the TV show. They've probably lived on the movies. So the change from like the old school Kirk to go to the like say the next gen cast would have been a big jump. And again, they've tried it like say going forward, and it's not been as successful. So I think this was for like say that like Paramount as a whole as a
Hmm.
soft kind of like say test to say will the next generation cast work on the big screen? Because they worked well on the small screen.
This
but...
was this was at a period where Star Trek was there was a 4 or 5 year, well, 3 or 4 year period in the mid 90s where Star Trek entered what's called the golden era, where we had the massive success of The Next Generation, which had just ended and transitioned into a movie, this one. We had Deep Space Nine entering its third season, well, the second season, third season. And then we had Star Trek Voyager, which is in production at the same time as Generations. So a lot was going on. And that's a good thing in a way, but it's also a bad thing because you have got so many resources being committed to a franchise, things go wrong. And we find this in The Next Generation because one of the issues that Generations had was costumes, to the point where they had to borrow DS9 uniforms to fit Next Gen cast members. So a little nitbit before we get into the main story, a little nitbit, right? If you watch Geordie LaForge, LeVar Burton in this, and you look at his uniform, it doesn't fit right. That's Miles O'Brien's. Really? If you look at Jonathan Frakes' uniform, it doesn't fit properly. That's because it's Avery Brooks.
That's crazy.
The problem was at the time, with it being a Next Generation movie, they had a bigger budget. It was a bigger budget, and obviously it's going to be shot in widescreen. The Next Generation was letterbox.
Did they blow it on the opening with that champagne bottle? Because that was still
the Dom Perignon.
That's where the budget went.
That was the cost of bomb at that time.
The Dom Perignon. So what happened was there was going to be a new uniform introduced in this movie that would carry on. And what it was going to be, there's going to be 2 uniforms. There's going to be a Starfleet one for the ships, and then obviously DS9 would have its own. They absolutely ballsed it up, couldn't get the costumes made in time for principal photography, so they ended up mixing next-gen uniforms with DS9 badges and DS9 and Voyager uniforms with next-gen and everything like that. So everything's an absolute hodgepodge. So it was
even some
weird...
of the cast, because I saw one member that was like going with
that's one of the things. That's one of the things I was going to raise, because I was just like, that's really odd. Like the final scene you get between Riker and Picard, they're wearing different uniforms. Like they're, it's basically Picard has it where the colors at the top and the it's darker underneath, and Riker has it where it's what you're wearing, and it's just like. Why? When did that happen? Like,
it was an absolute mess behind the scenes, and I mean, we'll get straight into the movie because the movie.
Well, I will say though, it's a great movie for all of those faults. Like, I didn't mind the faults that I saw because I was like, this is such a good film, and it's so well acted. Like, honestly, Malcolm McDowell is incredibly hit and miss as an actor. He is a mess in a lot of films. And in this, you're like, whoa, he fits perfectly. Like, he genuinely works really well as Soren.
Famously, Malcolm McDowell. I mean, this is Alexander Siddig's uncle. This is Julian Bashir's
That explains the acting.
Right? Malcolm McDowell has famously said he does not care about Star Trek. He literally did this for a paycheck. He could not give 2 shakes about Trek.
He said that as soon as it came out. Same as it came out afterwards. So when they were trying to get him to advertise the movie, he was like, no, fuck it. You pay this now, bitches. I'm out of here.
But in this movie, you wouldn't think that because he chews the scenery in every scene that he is in. Because he's just, like Synoiz said, he's hit and miss. But when he is hit, he owns it and he chews the scenery, and he's just that good of an actor.
He is amazing with the Klingons. Like, that scene on the Klingon shit is just... I was like watching a deal, just in orbit. Yeah,
we'll get into the movie because
before we get into the movie, can I just ask one thing? When is this set timeline wise?
So
because obviously there's a big event in the movie, which is that the Duras sisters actually get killed, and you're like, where must this sit in relation to the Dominion War if they're dead?
This is set, right? So Star Trek The Next Generation ended in 1994. It ended in the summer of 1994. This movie aired the same year. So it is set in 2369. So it is so it's right after the Next Generation ended. It is just before season 3 of Deep Space Nine was going to start, and just before season 1 of Voyager was going to start. So it's called the Golden Era, but it's literally 2369. So this is why Worf joins the crew of DS9, because obviously the Enterprise D gets destroyed. So the first part of the first part of the movie is obviously set during the launch of the Enterprise B. Now this is set 3 years after the events of the Undiscovered Country.
Right.
So the Undiscovered Country was 2291. This is 2294 ish, right? So it's 3 years after the Undiscovered Country. We see a retired Kirk, Chekhov, and Scotty here at the christening of this brand new ship. Blah 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 blah. Fun fact. First tangent of the night, because I know you guys in the audience have missed this. James Doohan and Walter Coying weren't supposed to be in this movie.
Right.
It was going to be Leonard Nimoy and DeForest Kelley.
Right.
DeForest Kelley turned it down due to ill health. Leonard Nimoy turned it down because he didn't think the part would suit his character. He didn't think he was happy with the way Spock's character ended with unification. He was happy with that. Spock was going to do his own thing. He didn't want to be here, so they drafted in Jimmy Doohan.
I feel
and
it
Walter
works.
Coyne. It works.
I feel it really works
works.
having them, because
yeah,
I think he's exactly right. Like Leonard Nimoy, he's got too much gravitas to just be like, hey, you're a background character, whereas this one has like famously underused characters like Scotty and Chekhov, where you're just going, I'm glad that they're getting some time without the film needing to be like, what the fuck can Chekhov be doing, like, you know, which is what the previous film.
But they in the space of 10 minutes they utilize Scotty and Chekhov to the maximum potential. You know, we obviously
Chekhov's amazing, isn't it? Like the little short bit he's in. I love his little back and forth with Kirk as well. Like the shit they would be given like behind this, like on the ship as well. Like, that's why probably Kirk doesn't kick about with them as much, because he probably doesn't get away with as much with them too.
But
it's good. It's because we're used to seeing the holy trilogy of, like, you know, Spock, McCoy, and Kirk being like this friend group, and so it's kind of nice showing, hey, Kirk is as much buddies with the other members as well, kind of thing, and there you get this. Yeah, it's a wonderful little repartee between them.
But we do see Captain John Harriman, fresh from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, as captain of the new Enterprise, and Sulu's daughter at the helm as well. It wouldn't be an Enterprise without a Sulu at the helm.
This is a weird one. Do we feel like... How do we feel about having Sulu's daughter in it? Because it's very weird to introduce a new character just to kind of go, this is... It feels like they're just injecting it into the lore and then being like, okay, that's in the universe now. Let's just never mention her again.
I have a theory.
They're like,
this
hey, Sulu
could have
isn't
been
gay, damn it.
This could have been, well, until Star Trek Beyond. This
yeah, that's it. Star Trek Beyond fixed it, but you're like, that was the only potential original.
He had to skip universes. Gay character we could have. Yeah, he had to skip universes.
He's got a daughter.
I feel there was potential at Paramount. Someone at Paramount, I don't know who, felt there may have been potential for a backdoor pilot for a new Star Trek series with John Harriman.
Possibly. The cast was quite rounded out.
We had Tim Russ as a human.
Yeah.
We had Sulu's daughter, and we had Ferris Bueller's friend. But I think, like, the way this opening scene is handled, you know, Kirk, Chekhov, and Scotty are absolutely swarmed by the press. This is a brand new ship. They clearly don't like the limelight. They are just there because they have been asked. You know, they're all retired. They're all being drafted back in to celebrate this new ship. And there is a notable absence, especially with Kirk, that he retired from Starfleet, and there's a notable absence in his life. And we see it in the few scenes opening with Generations where he looks at the captain's chair. And you can feel that longing within Kirk that, you know, did he did he retire too soon? Should he have continued on as a captain in the service and everything like that? And we also see as well within this, it's like a next generation where we get introduced to Sulu's daughter. And, Chekhov is like, I'd like to introduce you to the Sulu. Yeah. And he's like, your father, Hisataru Sulu? Oh, you must have been. Yeah. And I love the fact that Kirk goes to Chekhov, because Chekhov looks at Sulu's daughter and goes, I was never that young. And Kirk looks at him and goes, no, you were younger. And he was, because he was only 18 years old when he was in the original series.
It's really cute.
No,
it's a cute,
but
but
it's and there's genuine warmth as well, which it could have come across as like pretty naff or cheesy as well. It was cheesy in a way, but it was kind of like the good cheesy, like the nostalgia cheesy. What a lot of the TV or movies are trying to force down your throats now. It was kind of done in a nice way, and again, I'm laughing about it now, but this, and as Graham said, this movie is a good movie and it looks fantastic as well. This is a 30-year-old Star Trek movie. The special effects are done amazingly. One of the questions I wanted to ask as well, I didn't want to cut in because this is not my show. Can you remember when you first saw this movie as well? Because I remember seeing this, it was one of the at the pictures at the time. It was one of the movies that me dad went to, and it was a really nice experience I had with me dad. But I don't know. I think Goodwill, you said before this was one of the first movies you saw at the cinema. Is that right?
No. Famously, my first ever movie at the pictures was Star Trek: First Contact.
That's the same as mine as well. We just missed this, I think, age-wise.
I saw this on VHS in 1995. It was mind blowing for me, because it was like, oh my god, I've got like Kirk and Picard in the same place, and like, because I was only 7, my fragile little pea brain couldn't like fathom, because I didn't know what would happen. I never saw the movie. I just heard Kirk and Picard are in the same movie, so I was like, but how does that work? The like that's like 100 years before this, and that's that. How do they go? And I was like, are there going to be 2 Enterprises? Are there going to be this? And it was just like, it was mind blowing for me to
trust Goodwill and score straight to how many ships is there going to be in this film?
Well, yeah, because like
god, there's porn at the end though.
Because
the
like,
last shot of the movie is like, hey, here's 3 different classes of ship, and Goodwill's just like, it's the Randy Marsh meme.
Miranda class, Nebula class, Oberth class. Miranda class, Nebula class, Oberth class. Enterprise B, Excelsior 2 class. Excelsior refit, heavy cruiser. But my mind couldn't fathom it, and this was because I'd seen Star Trek movies and I'd seen The Next Generation, but this was like The Next Generation on steroids, because it had a bigger budget. Everything just looked darker, looked better, and looked more grand.
Beautiful.
And it was just like, but it was at that time where certain VHS trailers were a little bit misleading, where they were like 2 Enterprises, 2 captains, and you're just like, oh my god, and like when you watch it, you understand why. But yeah, I saw this at home with my mum and my nana, and I was just absolutely blown away by it. But it broke my heart within the first 10 minutes, because the Enterprise B gets launched, and it's like we're on about with Kirk, Chekhov, and Scotty. They're there to just celebrate, and they're getting all this media attention, and they can't be arsed with it and stuff like that. And when Kirk is asked to give the order to take him out, and he's like, he's just like, take us out. And everyone's like giving a clap of applause, and just like Chekhov was like, well done, sir. And Scotty's like, brought a tear to my eye. Oh, shut up. And it's just,
it's a great statement, this whole scene, about the sort of the lack of compassion of the media, the fact that he's no longer a captain, and like it echoes what he says at the end of the film, he's no longer a captain, he no longer has the ability to influence like the future or help people, and people are just seeing him as this kind of relic to be sort of rolled out kind of thing, and being like, hey, look, it's this famous captain kind of thing. And I like that it's portrayed with the reporters on the bridge all of the cameramen, where basically they're not like holding cameras, they basically have headsets with like cameras on them, and they're all totally robotic. They don't smile, they don't emote or anything, but they get right up in their faces. And it's very much a criticism of the press. It's very much a criticism of these unfeeling creatures that are only there to get the story, get the shot kind of thing, and that none of these people really care about Kirk. They just want him to say the line, you know?
But
And
we
they probably
see
wouldn't
this.
even, and they probably wouldn't even be there if Kirk and that wasn't on board. If there was just like the Enterprise B going out, they wouldn't.
They don't give a shit.
But
You know,
I mean,
they
they even say that. Like, they even say, like, this is the first Enterprise in 30 years without Captain Kirk. And like that's all they care about. Like, this is
he is a name. He's not a person. He is a brand, not a person.
But then we see John Harriman, the new captain, who is portrayed as inexperienced. This is his first chair. This is his first captain, and we see that they are talking. You know, the ship gets launched, and he has to hijack the media to go, ladies and gentlemen, we've just cleared this, and we're going to take a quick trip around the block and stuff like that. And then what we see is a reversal of these old relics, like you said, suddenly stepping into their own. Graham is just silently meditating within the void because his camera is froze. I do apologise. What we see is the old relics stepping up to the plate when the Enterprise receives a distress call from two refugee ships that are caught in a mysterious, mysterious energy wave. And what we see is this dramatic reversal from these are just old retired relics celebrating, on this new ship with a new crew and stuff like that. But then we see this new crew and its new ship and new crew completely out of their own depth and having to rely on the older generation for advice, because as soon as they get a distress call, they are under-equipped, they are inexperienced, and they have lives to save. They have received a distress call. They're the only ship in range. It's down to them to do it.
But to be fair, look, Kirk's like an excited puppy at this moment as well.
He is.
He's like jumping off the seat saying, "Oh, it's like a bit of adventure, a bit of something." And it's almost like bringing that little bit of spark
craving. It's that craving to be back in the saddle again, and it's that craving for that adventure, like you say. So they answer these distress calls, they get to the energy wave, and they see that these two refugee ships are caught in it, and one of them gets destroyed. And what we then see is one of the most famous tropes within Star Trek ever since this movie came out. We need to get a tractor beam. Get a tractor beam, pull that ship out. We can't. Why? It's not installed till Tuesday. You left you left Space Dock without a tractor beam, and John's like, oh. And then, it's that case of Scotty and Kirk are going, right, why don't you try a feedback pulse? Why don't you try a torpedo? We don't have torpedoes. Why? Tuesday. And it's just like this thing, and they're coming up with these more ideas, and suddenly the Enterprise B gets caught in this energy wave, and they are both being pulled in. Both the refugee ship and the ship are being pulled in, and now it's a race against time to save one or both ships from this wave before they are absolutely obliterated. And what we see, and this is an amazing and very quick growth moment from Captain Harriman, where he's been completely inexperienced, he's out of his depth, the ship is under-equipped. He realizes he's got three extremely experienced senior officers on, and he goes, I would appreciate it if you had any help. And immediately Kirk steps up and he goes, you need to do this, you need to do this. It's not installed till Tuesday.
It's so perfect there. The guy, like I say, the criticism of the first film is that none of the gags land. They hit their stride with the later films, and in this one, all of the gags land. I think. Except
it's probably it is one of the funniest treks, I believe, in my opinion. But
I wouldn't say it was one of the funniest, but it does have, because obviously I think four will
forever be.
Five will always be the funniest.
Four will forever be possibly the funniest one, with five close runner up with the way it was written. But yeah, it's. But sorry, go on.
I like though that I don't know if it's intentional, but I wonder if this is a statement for how businesses are run, because the fact is, realistically, this is the flagship of the Federation.
Yeah.
There is no way in hell they would get a green officer to be the captain of it. There's no way they would get someone who hadn't had experience and make him the captain of the flagship kind of thing. But then it's the idea of maybe they would, because maybe that's how businesses are, where we literally just get graduates from college or whatever who talk big talk and then be like, hey, be in these massive positions of power where you don't know what to do, and you're not actually. And also, let's underfund everything. Let's try and rush stuff out in order to get the praise for it before it's ready, such as before the tractor beams installed, before like the thing. And I wonder if it is a criticism of how businesses are run. But I don't think it is. But I like that I can draw parallels to that. But it's the
But yeah, and again, just to mirror that, it could be like a sports analogy as well, because you have to remember you've got this new captain who is in basically this in league or basically sitting aside to this absolute legend. And it's like if you're a football player and you were going to be taken over from like the new star, the old star type thing.
He's gone. He's gone.
We've lost it. It's like me standing next.
He's like back. Me. Oh.
It's like, this happened. Sorry, where did I get up to in my rant?
That's fine. I kind of took over, so don't worry.
You froze for a while, so yeah, we filled.
But yeah, but basically, like if you imagine, like I say, a new green football player that's meant to be taking on like the star of the team, and you've got the aging star who's basically on his way out, and the pressure and the stress that would be on a young player or a young captain to take over from someone as big as Kirk. That again, he could have scored amazingly at Starfleet, done all the tests. He might have ran his own like ship or like smaller missions. But having, as Graham said, the flagship and having Kirk next to him, he might have just went white. He might have just blanked out. Went, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah,
help.
But he has the best growth moment of going. Know your limits and know when you need to defer to other people. That is the ultimate skill of a leader. Knowing when you go, hey, I have to outsource that, or oh, actually, I need to trust someone else's opinion.
And what we see is the three senior officers, the three legends, utilized to the best of their abilities, even Chekhov, because they don't need a helmsman. But Chekhov immediately goes, we need to prepare the sick bay. Where is your medical crew? Oh, they don't get here till Tuesday. And he's just... But what I love at this moment with Chekhov, he goes straight to the press and he goes, you and you've just become nurses. Come with me. And he just takes command of like triaging the refugees that are going to be beamed aboard. We see Scotty immediately coming in with the engineering solution. If we create a feedback pulse via the deflector dish, but we need someone to go down to deflector control and do that. And what we see is John Harriman go, I will do it.
I also love that when he...
Go on.
Sorry. I also love that when he goes down to change the deflector dish, it's next generation technology. It's moved on from what they had in the previous films, and it's become the typical next generation thing where it's all the pulley out light chips and stuff like that.
Chips,
and I kind of love that it's like, whoa, we're seeing Kirk with technology, and it's a nice little crossover period, I think. But yeah,
we see John Harriman, the captain, volunteer immediately to do this. But then Kirk goes, no, I'll do... Because Kirk sits in the chair and then he goes, wait, you are the captain. The ship needs a captain. I'll go do it. And we see that this is a growth moment for Kirk as well as Harriman. We see a growth moment for Kirk because Kirk could have easily got what he wanted, as he did in the motion picture, as he did in Star Trek 4, as he did in Star Trek 6. He could have got what he wanted. But... he grew in this last moment because he was like, no, the captain, you are needed on the bridge. I will go do it. And he goes down to deflector control and they are beaming the crew of the LCARS aboard. And we see Chekhov trying to triage. It's absolute pandemonium in this sick bay. And we see our first appearance of Guinan.
But before that, can I say this is where Star Trek goes like, this is why I love this movie and love Star Trek. This is how dark and brutal this movie gets. The first ship explodes before the game get a chance to save it. And Scotty says, how many people are on there? And he's like, over 140 people dead straight away. Yeah. And then when they beam across the second ship, it's like, how many people did we save? And it's like, 40 out of 200. Yeah. It's like, Jesus, like I know, like we'll never meet them people, but to kill off nearly 300 people
But here's
straight away in the start of the film,
but
You
here's
know
the
what
thing.
though? Like I want to. Sorry, I'll let you speak. Goodwill.
Here's the thing. Let's not forget these refugees were escaping the Borg because these people were escaping their home world that the Borg had just assimilated.
Yeah.
And yet, no one knew about the Borg until the Enterprise encountered them in the Next Generation, 70 years later.
What I think though, the thing that I find most sad about this, and people don't think about this, okay, but it's the fact of it's the same with the Lord of the Rings, where like Helm's Deep is such a tragedy in the Lord of the Rings because it's elves. The elves come and they die, and you've got to think that these are not mortal people. These are creatures that have existed for sort of 300, maybe 1,000 years, kind of thing. And these people on the refugee ships are Elorians, like where we only ever meet 3 of them in all of Trek, like in all of Trek series and films. And it's the idea of like, yeah, these people, like Guinan at this point is about 800 and something, I think. Like,
but she looks
isn't
fantastic.
She's
She
a
looks
good
beautiful.
few hundred years old. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. It's this idea so these are people with thousands of years of experience. These are people who will not die normally, who could have had a crazy lives, had all of this stuff going on, and they're just gone in a fraction of a second. And that's kind of it makes it even sadder, I think, you know, the fact that these are sort of immortal beings that are destroyed this way.
It's kind of like I said, we see the first appearance of Guinan, who is obviously shell shocked, and we see her like her exchange with Chekhov, where he's like, "It's okay, you're fine, you're on the Enterprise." But then we see her a hysterical Elorian, and it's our first appearance of Malcolm McDowell in the film. He's absolutely he's delirious, he's in shock, and they have to tranquilize her. He's like, "I have to go back, I have to go back," and they go, "What the hell is he on about?" I don't know, and they just think it's just, you know, delirium and shell shock
It's
about
just
everything
Malcolm
that happened.
McDowell. Yeah, just overacting.
He's like,
"Where's my bowler hat?" And he's just,
he's just went, "I've just come off the set of Tank Girl. What is happening now?"
But we see, like,
Was Malcolm McDowell aware he was in this movie, or did they just grab him in the street and put him in the set?
a monumental amount of cognac was used. But it's we see, like, this is the first foreshadowing where, you know, Soren is going, "I have to go back, I have to go back," and people, you know, if you're watching that, you go, he's a refugee.
So distressed.
He wants to go back to his home. He wants to do this. He wants to do it. So no one knows what's going on. We've just got this energy wave beating the shit out of these ships. You know, the second ship gets destroyed, and then it's the Enterprise itself stuck.
Yeah.
And they need to break free, otherwise they're going to be the third victim of it. And we see Kirk frantically messing with the isolinear chips down in deflector control, and we see Tim Russ playing unnamed officer on the bridge a year before Tim Russ becomes Tuvok, and a year after.
And I was going to say, he didn't. I was checking, he didn't have pointy ears in this one.
A year after, he played Die Hard in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Die Hard with Picard in a vest.
It would be so good if they had the forethought to be like, make him Tuvok. It would have been great if he was Tuvok in this movie.
Well, this is sort of why they were trying to retcon it in a certain way, where they're like, "Oh, that dude looks like that dude looks like the human officer from Generations." You can't really retcon something when he's got like those ears. You can't just CGI them back on in the mid-90s. What they were hoping to do was say Tuvok was on the Enterprise, you know, Tuvok was on the Excelsior, then he went to the Enterprise B, and then he left Starfleet. But they could not make it fit, because obviously them ears though. But we see that Scotty's engineering genius, you know, you need to do this with the deflectors. Kirk does it, and they try to break free, but as the ship is listing away from the ribbon feeds back and hits the ship with a monumental whack. And the one thing I love about 90s Star Trek movies is they utilize practical stunts and effects to convey that this ship, I mean, you see the ship get hit in CGI, like it's not CGI, it's actually a real model that they hit. And you see it like get hit and like
Do that again. I quite
list
like your spanking
that,
technique
like
there,
that.
Goodwill. So
It's the ship hits and it lists violently, and I love the way that they looked at the like they planned the CGI or the practical effects shot to go, right, the ship's going to list this way, therefore the crew have to be thrown from a certain direction, because obviously such a violent jolt, inertia dampeners and everything like that would just not work. And you just see, like, this is a brand new ship and it is just getting the shit kicked out of it, and the crew has been flown around and everything like that, but they do break free. And then we get the first sad moment of the movie where
I got goosebumps.
I got goosebumps where it's like, Kirk's Harriman's like, "You did it, Kirk," and then they get nothing back, and Scotty's like, "Bridge to Captain Kirk." Well, no. Sulu goes, because Harriman goes, "Damage report," and Sulu goes, breach in deck 14, 15, and 16. And then Scotty's like desperately trying to contact Kirk, and they go down to deflector control, and we see another beautifully executed shot where we see Chekhov and Scotty get there. Scotty and Harriman get there, and then Chekhov goes, "Oh my God, was there anybody in here?" And the scene just ends with Scotty just going, "Aye," and the way that it doesn't pull out, but it transitions from like a close up to an exterior to convey the size of this ship and the size of the hole that has been punched in it, and that the fact that Kirk is gone. Kirk was here and he's dead. To kill now, can you imagine, right, in 1994 watching this for the first time, and within the first 10 minutes you go, "It's great, there's going to be Captain Kirk in this," and then he's dead within 10 minutes. The
trailer lied, bitches.
The next time something traumatic, the next time something traumatic like this happened was Star Trek 09.
Just to say though as well,
that was the start of the movie.
The performance with Scotty, like Scotty's performance going on from the bridge when he says "bridge to Kirk," his look and his facial expressions, that's what got me over the edge. Like literally, anything. But his actual performance in that moment, I know he's just a small role, but it sets the tone. It sets the tone of what to come and what to expect. So this is what I loved about this movie as a whole. Nothing happens or everything happens, but you don't expect it, and you kind of think it's going to play out a certain way, and it doesn't. And again, not many Star Trek movies, or not many. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of Star Trek movies that are good, but a lot of them do play by the numbers. This one almost feels like it's like throws the rule book out the window and goes, "Let's just have a bit of fun and see what sticks and what doesn't." And
it takes a lot of risks.
100%, and that's why it holds quite a strong part of me. And that's when, like you said, you were doing these movies, I was like, I want Generations. I could have said the motion picture. I love the motion picture, even if Graham doesn't, just because that's my entry into this Trek for my, like, say, as a kid, and then it kind of made me want to watch like the old shows, then watch Next Generation. Didn't watch this Deep Space Nine stuff. That wasn't for me. But
boo. Synoiz, what are you going to say? What are we going to say?
I will say, hi Adam, welcome to the chat. Happy birthday for the other day, you beautiful bastard, you
magnificent tree.
Are you wearing a top, Adam? Just let us know if you're topless.
But I will happily wear a top if they're called Adam. But yeah. But then we get the most jarring thing from this very sad scene of, them sort of realizing that Kirk's been killed, or believing that Kirk's been killed. And there's a very weird thing that this introduces into the film later, which I'll discuss then. But it's the fact that then we cut to the cast of The Next Generation on a sailing ship, like, on a what
HMS
kind of ship
Enterprise. It's a clipper ship. It's a frigate. Excuse me.
Yeah. But it's very weird, and basically it's a very holodeck simulation where they're basically sort of on the original Enterprise, and they're giving Worf his promotion to Lieutenant Commander, which is well deserved, I think, after 7 seasons of The Next Generation. But when does he become commander? He becomes commander in DS9, doesn't he? Yeah, cool. But I think it's a great little scene, and it's, what I'll say about this film is it kind of, it doesn't use some of the characters as much as it can, but then it has everyone there. So I think Troy's probably, yeah, Crusher doesn't really get used much in the film at all, and
No.
Troy doesn't get used much in it.
Well, Troy gets used and
Troy
then
has
lives with
crucial
that
scenes.
for 30 years.
Yeah. But I think the thing with Troy in this movie, it's the fact that she does get scenes, and all of the stuff that she does is really important. She's just not there for anything else. So
No.
she's basically a face in the background in scenes, and
Yeah.
then she gets about sort of 4 really good lines, like when she's counseling sort of Picard, and then when she's speaking to Data at the end. And that's kind of it. And it's like,
Troy's
yeah, it's a
scene
good
right
role,
there.
but you kind
Troy's
of need
scene
some...
right
well,
there.
yeah.
But I love that, like, when it's such a change and shift to what we've just witnessed and what we've just experienced, because we're still in shock. Let's be honest, we're still in the shock, and it brings back that, like I said, we've still got an hour and a half of this movie to go, and it's like, all right, and so what we're going to trip, and it's like, again, change of pace brings it to a little bit of a joyous moment. To, like I say, with the cast of the Next Generation fooling around in the holodeck, giving Worf his like I say, his promotion. But I love the way they do it as well, and they do it the old style. He has to get the hat, and he's like, nobody's ever got the hat. And Worf, being the absolute beast he is, he jumps up and like looks like the most unnatural jump I've ever seen. Not that might be how Klingons jump. Not going to judge, but it doesn't look like a
Klingons
natural
can't jump, it's a movie.
Right.
If the thing is with Generations, it is a metaphor for life, where you have to take the good with the bad, because that is life. Life is not one thing. Life is a culmination of emotions, and this film is that metaphor. It's a representation of life. It is the beginning of life. It is the end of life. It is how you live, and this is what Picard says at the end of the movie. You know, it's how you live, and we see, like, they celebrate this promotion. They do this tradition where he has to get the hat, and Riker says remove the plank instead of retract the plank, pisses off Worf because Worf falls into the ocean. But we also see in this scene, before we get to the end of it, we see the beginning of Data's story within this movie, where he's asking, like, why is it funny that that this has happened to Worf?
It's basically they remove the plank. For people who don't know, they accidentally remove the plank.
Yeah.
So Worf, basically in his moment of triumph, falls into the water and is very angry. Everyone bursts into laughter, and Data has to asks Crusher, like, why is this funny? Why is this amusing? And she explains, like, oh, it's just funny. So he immediately goes, oh, okay, and then pushes her off the side of the ship into the water. And then everyone's absolutely shocked, just being like, why did you do that? And he's like, is it not funny? And it shows that there's still this disconnect. But I mean, it's unrealistic. It's the fact of if that scene had happened, because they love Data so much, they would have all laughed. Like, they would have sort of stopped. But for the purposes of the film, it does it where it goes like, okay, this is him not getting humanity enough and not getting what emotions are.
But Data, but that was not funny. But we see a little exchange between Riker and Picard, where Picard's like, "This is the life, just the stars to guide us."
Come again.
Oh no, the stars to guide us, and just living life on the sea. And Riker being Riker, where he's just like, bad food, no women. But then
the horny little devil him. But just to ask a question as well about Data's journey in this movie, because it is quite a shift and quite an advancement in Data's story in this movie as well. Regarding what comes up next with First Contact, do you think they had First Contact in mind making this movie and wanting to plant the seeds with where Data goes?
No. First Contact was. First Contact wasn't. It was on the board, but it wasn't planned
I'm
in
back.
a way.
I'm back.
He's back. It wasn't planned in a
sorry.
way. But this was.
I'm on the other side of the house. So
it was a Generations, says Mark. It was the Pinocchio effect with Data, where we had the emotion chip in the Next Generation that was stolen by Law, but then Data had never used it. It was there, but it was never used. And this is a transitional movie for Data, where it is the next step in Data's evolution, where he wants to experience emotion. But before we get to that, we see that Picard gets a message. And when he's reading it, this is what I love about Patrick Stewart. He is able to convey a whole range of emotions in the space of 5 seconds, where he's gone from being content, he's with his crewmates, he's happy, he's celebrating, to being absolutely destroyed emotionally in the space of seconds. And then what we see
is exactly what life is. It's exactly what the ride of life is that everything can turn on a dime, so enjoy every moment while you're in it.
And what we see is, as Picard is experiencing that, the ship receives a distress call from the Amagosa station, so Riker puts the ship on red alert, and Picard's already left. Picard's just walked away, and Riker has to call him to the bridge. They get to the station, and what we see is, and again, this is another great thing. This is what I love about the holodeck. They still have to wear the costumes. They're in the middle of this distress signal. They all have to make their way to the bridge. And what I love is, when they're making their way to the bridge, Data's still got his rapier, and he has to make his way to the bridge, and the relieving officer has to take his sword so he can take the con. But what we see with Picard, he attends the bridge, and there's been a distress signal for the Amagosa star. It's it's a research station that's studying the effects of the star's behavior, and we see Picard is visibly distraught, but he's trying to maintain the best composure he can do, and we see Riker not knowing what's going on, but Riker just being Riker. Sir, how do you want us to advise? How would you want us to proceed? What is the best course of action? Picard gives him it, and then when Riker tries to question it, we see Picard crack and just snap at Riker. And this is the first time I think we've probably seen Picard act this way in The Next Generation. And
it was a very different version of him, especially I know the news he gets is devastating, and it would devastate anyone. But this is John Luke. This is Picard. This is the person that's been through everything and never blinked. And we see him blink in this moment.
And we see Riker. We see Riker also visibly taken aback by it, and then try to maintain his own composure, and then proceed with the mission. What we see when they beam over, that this space station is absolutely wrecked. There's obviously been a firefight of some sort. As they're going through, they find that there's been disruptor fires. So Riker's like, "Oh, great! Well, it's either what was it, Breen, Romulan, or Ferengi, I believe, or Cardassian." So it's immediately.
Do the Breen use disruptors?
Yeah. So it's immediately put them on high alert, because it lets the audience know, well, it's either one of 3 big baddies that has done this, and then we find the Romulan body. But they do
nice
find
green paint on his face.
Nice
as well.
green paint, yeah.
I do quite like that. It's a bit of a, hey, this movie's mainly Klingons, but here's a bit of Romulan love for you. We'll put a bit of Romulan in there.
We do find one survivor, ironically, the same survivor from the Enterprise B. It's Tolian Zoran.
When they say a survivor, though, he's buried under a lot of shit.
He's had a hard paper round, hasn't he, in the last 100 years?
It's not just hiding under a blanket. It's like, oh, this metal rod here, this pylon here. It's like, how did you get under there?
But we see that this research station was also carrying out research on, I think it's theta radiation, or not theta radiation, which is something that the Romulans
produced. It was I can't remember it now, but it was something that basically they produced to try and it couldn't be detected by something. I think that was the reason why they were making it or something like that. So again, my knowledge isn't as great as
it's that episode where it's the Romulans who are trying to make it a cloaking device that you can still fire under, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they manage it, I'm pretty sure, but they're requiring trilithium to do it, which is basically what they're discovering. They're like, there's a new compound called trilithium that exists here.
What we see though is the exchange between Picard and Riker, and this is a very cold, very distant exchange from Picard because again, he's absolutely distraught. We don't know what's happened. Riker doesn't know what's happened, and Riker is still trying to maintain. You know, he doesn't want to ask because at the end of the day, it's his captain. But he's got a job to do. And Picard just basically says, look, you deal with this. Advise Starfleet, you deal with it. And then we get the first instance of Geordi and Data, where Data is reflecting on what happened on the holodeck previously, and his concerns, for want of a better term, that he is unable to process and understand emotions. So he asked Geordi to install the emotion chip within him. And when we see Picard's first interaction with Zoran as well, this is an iconic scene for me because it plays into again the shift in tone within one scene, because we get Picard and Zoran, where Zoran wants to go back to the station to continue his research. It's valuable research. It's very time constrained, and Picard is just like, no. If there is time, we will do it, but we need to ascertain the situation. We have found Romulans. No. And what we see is Malcolm McDowell at his very best in this scene, where what I love is the piercing eye contact he has with Jean-Luc, where we don't know what's happened at this point, where he goes, some say time is a fire in which we burn. And we don't know why this affects Picard so much yet, but it also
because he backs down in this scene as well a little bit. And
but what we see is this is like, upon re-watching, this is an indication of the Elorians' telepathic capabilities in a certain way. But I absolutely love this. But then we get the contrast with Data walking in to 10 forward.
Yeah.
What a bell end. I'm sorry, emotion Data is a dick.
No.
I just want to say one thing. I really like that we get loads of bits of Troy where she's not saying anything, but she's reacting to the fact of she can sense there's something seriously wrong with Picard. And it just these little things where everyone else is going, oh, there's something wrong, and she's like, no, something is seriously wrong. Like, he's not just in a bad mood, there's something really bad. But I am going to agree with Paul here, which very rarely happens, I found. But I'm not a fan of emotion Data. I love the story that they were trying to tell, but he's annoying as fuck. You know,
I couldn't stand 10 minutes with him, to be honest. It's like Lee on acid.
He is portrayed.
It's very much like the message of the film is the idea of like, don't try to change yourself. Like that, it's very grass is always greener. We've basically got a villain who wants to get to a certain place because he was happier there rather than appreciate. Like, he literally wastes, like, what is it, 80 years or something, like trying to get back to this one place rather than trying to make something better where he is or trying to help people. And then we have Data, who's going to change his entire personality and go
the
through
flip of a switch.
all of this suffering because he thinks it'll be better at the other side. And then we have like Picard going, where do I belong? Like, what is happiness for me, kind of thing. The film is, for a film that doesn't travel that much and it stays around the same place, it's probably got the most journey for a lot of like characters and
emotionally, yes, I completely agree. Like, there's so many different waves, and like, if you think of Picard, this is the first time we've seen, as I mentioned, we're seeing almost have a weakness where you see his blind spot, and again with Data's growth as well, kind of like other characters like Worf gets lost off, like Riker is just a horny pervert all the way through, which is not a bad case, but I think Guinan plays a good partner as well, like Goldie Hawn's character when she comes into a bit more, like
Whoopi Goldberg.
It's Guinan, isn't it?
Guinan.
Yeah, I think he said Goldie Hawn. I was like,
that's a
let me list the differences between Whoopi Goldberg and Goldie Hawn.
Actresses from the 80s, the same thing. That's all blend into one.
I feel like doing the Father Ted Dougal bit where it's like, okay, so this cow is far away, this cow is closer.
we
I've never
see
been good with
Data,
names.
but to counter both of you, I think Data is the most juvenile in this movie because emotions are new to him, and it's a huge thing to process for him, and he's unable to
Goodwill, when did
control
you
it.
get your emotional chip?
I'm still waiting. It's very, but it's very like like I said, this is a transitional movie for Data, and it's a transitional for me from that childlike innocence and curiosity to moving into puberty and having this whole range of emotions and being unable and finding it difficult to process how you're feeling and regulate your emotions because we all have that hormonal imbalance. And for me, this is Data in his teenage years. This and First Contact, this is teenage Data. And when we see him in 10 Forward, where he's smiling at everyone because he's never been able to smile at everyone, and then Guinan's like, oh, would you like to try something new from Fructose Free? And he's like, yes. And he's just like, he drinks it, he starts gagging. And he's like, this is a new sensation. And she's like, and Data's like, LaForge is like, sorry, Guinan's like, it seems like you don't like it. He's just like, yes, it is revolting. I hate this. More. And she just goes, more. And he goes, please. And it's just...
I absolutely love that as well. Like that's my favorite thing. It's just like, I wrote it down actually.
So what he's going through as well, it's probably one of the most scariest thing I can think of. Going through your whole existence, not experiencing emotions and having emotions for the first time. Jesus, that would be a minefield. It's just scary.
I think that's the thing though. It's like I don't like emotion Data. I find him annoying as fuck in the movie, but he's totally essential, and we need to see this, and it adds so much to it by having this particular journey explored, kind of thing. And it's this idea of just having characters being annoying, like, isn't a bad thing. We shouldn't avoid having them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like it's one of these things of like a lot of the time they can be like you don't like them, but they tend to keep the plot going. Like I recently saw Alien Romulus, and it's yet another Alien movie where one guy who is an absolute dickhead ruins everything for everyone, and you're sitting there being like, not again.
Spoiler alert for Alien Romulus, not one Romulan, so that was false advertising. We see
Tell you what though, it made us scared of facehuggers for the first time. I'll tell you what, that was fucking horrifying.
For the first time.
I think it's
vaginas with legs do not terrify you.
But you don't really see them in action. You see them a little bit, but this time you see them going full spider mode. It's fucking
Oh no.
It's actually brilliant. Like I saw it and I was just like, oh my god, there's finally a third good Alien movie, and it just felt really weird. Just being
last
like,
10 minutes.
Okay, there's actually finally an Alien trilogy after like how many years? It's because you can ignore the rest.
but getting back to Generations, when we see LaForge and Data beam over to the Amagosa station to find out what research was being carried out, and we see Data again struggling, and he's like very chipper and he's laughing all the time. One thing I will always love about this scene: make it so. But we see him, they open up the torpedo tube. They open up the door, and LaForge is just like, Data's like, open sesame.
I did laugh at this scene as well, because this is where it over explains a lot of the stuff as well. Like LaForge is walking around saying, there's a gap I can see using my visors that points this out that nobody else could see. I was like, yeah, all right, then you could have just said you saw a gap, mate. You didn't have to show off you've got like these special like seeing things, but yeah. Just give yourself a break there.
We see though with at this point where Data is really, really struggling with emotions, and it's becoming too much for him, and he can't stop laughing, and he's trying to make jokes and he's dealing with it, and we see that at this point it overloads his matrix. And for me, this is very terrifying to see Data act like this, especially when I was a kid, where he's like his eyes and his head and his skull is moving, and he's like his whole body is struggling to do this, and then he just smacks back into the deck plating, and then he's suddenly himself momentarily, where it's just like, that my emotion chip has overloaded my positronic relay, and we then see the entrance of Soren.
Yeah. Just nicely timed.
Yeah, and he
Well,
just
I
absolutely.
wondered if it was something about the what is it, the trilithium that they've got here. Something about that was what caused the motion chip to
All right,
override.
right,
But I don't.
Yeah,
It doesn't suggest. It doesn't say that. But it's kind of like going. Is it just like
potentially.
serendipitous that he just
Yeah.
steps in when that happens? But
I
But he,
could
I
have
mean,
could have had a panic attack. We all have them, so
well,
When he
maybe it could have been
absolutely-
Soren doing it. You know, like it's maybe this could be something that Soren set up as a defense.
Yeah.
You know,
when he
thing, because he's a
absolutely, when he
clever
just
bloke.
does that to Geordie, I mean,
Yeah.
that is a hell of a flat. But we see Data afraid.
Yeah, which is terrifying, which is so sad at
Yeah.
the same time. It's like it breaks your heart because, again, it plays out through the movie, like the whole reason and like the repercussions from Data being afraid. But seeing Data frozen there again, it gets you, like it probably hits you in the chest. It's like, oh,
It does, because then we move into the scene with Picard in his quarters and Troy, and like so I agree with Synoiz. Troy is very underused in this movie, but when she is used, she's played to a full potential in terms of she is the counselor.
She has some of the best scenes, but they're the only scenes she's in.
yeah.
But we see, and this again, it's at very few occasions we have seen Picard upset all the way through the Next Generation, but we finally we finally get to find out what has happened to make Picard as he is, where there was a fire at the family's vineyard, and Picard's brother Robert and his son Rene have both died in a house fire, but we get there after Picard has fully broken down, because he's looking at the family album and he's telling Troy, like, I haven't told you about Rene, so idealistic, so full of wonder, and so very gentle. And I mean, I'm getting emotional now thinking about it, because the way he just conveys that distress and that like being so heartbroken that essentially someone who he considered his own son has died.
And it's just the fear he's got as well, because it's not just like upset; it's fear that his family name or family
he's
line
the last of the Picards.
stops. Yeah. So,
because he says
it's a very real fear, and I love that it does this, because it's the fact of it parallels with Kirk, where it's the fact of, he's had his whole life being an adventurer and going around and whatnot, and he's never actually stopped to go, what makes me happy? He's never stopped to go, should I have a family? He's always kind of left it to other people. And admittedly, that what got me was obviously like the sadness from Picard and him trying to suppress it. But it's also it's something that like resonates with me, because it's the fact of, as a gay man, it's the idea of going, whoa, is it the end of my family line, like sort of when I'm kind of gone? And that weird realization of just being like, whoa, am I ever going to get around to having kids, and how am I going to have kids, and all of those kind of things that I kind of have in my mind. And this scene kind of picks up on it. And obviously it's not just gay people, but it's the idea of like the fact of him getting older and realizing what a threat time is, especially after Soren's basically pointed out like how dangerous time is, and that we should be afraid of it.
It's a decision that I think a lot of us do face in our lives. I'm famously, I don't want children. I never want children. It is just one of those things I've never been interested in. I don't feel like I'd be a good parent, and I feel that what is best is I don't pursue that. However, there is nothing stopping you from thinking, and maybe thinking, is that the right decision? And as you get older, and as Picard says in the film, he realizes that there are fewer days ahead of him than there are behind him, and he questions his life choices. He questions, should I have pursued my career in Starfleet, or should I have carried on the family name? Should I have settled down and raised a family? He had many opportunities, as we saw all the way through the Next Generation, but his duty came first, and it resonates with a lot of people, because like myself, my decision, I don't want children. It's a hard decision, but it's what's best for me. But it would be what's best, because I feel if I brought a child in the world and I couldn't look after them, it's wrong on them.
It's something that comes back to in the new season of Picard as well, because
Yes.
that's the thing when, like, say you find out that he does have a son,
Yeah.
and the change in Picard, or like change in his demeanor and how he reacts as well. It's very similar to his kind of change in this. You
Yeah.
see an aspect of Picard in that you've not seen or glimpsed before, probably in this or in future episodes. But it's just an interesting take that, again, for all he's been through and all he'll always be remembered for, that like family and stuff is his weak spot. That's his like blind
Yeah.
spot that kind of will always think it's only if the Borg had known it properly then and he would have been fucked.
As like as much as because we know from Star Trek he was the first Picard to leave the solar system. And it was a very controversial thing in his family because the Picards were very like, you know, you must remain and be within the family, and you know there was Picards that colonized Mars and stuff like that. There was obviously from season 2 of Picard who went to Europa and stuff like that, but they never left the solar system, and they were very like homebodies in a very wide sense, you know.
But to make everyone feel better as well, Alex, I'll probably never have children, but as the cult leader, you are all my children.
Don't drink
I like,
the Kool-Aid.
I like to think that one day, I will have kids, but it's gonna take some. Yeah, it's gonna take a certain set of circumstances to happen, which is, the clock is ticking. So I very much sympathise with Picard here. I love the idea of showing that Picard is immediately puts the wall back up kind of thing, where he goes like, oh well, time to move on, time to be serious, and this is what he does. This is how he gets through, like, you know, situations. But you can see how which a lot of us can relate to. But what happens next? Because hilariously, in my notes, the next note I have is there's a huge quantum implosion, and I'm like,
the sun.
I'm pretty sure stuff happens before then.
What I love about this movie is it uses lighting to the best potential possible, because they are next to a star, and on a ship, to conserve power, if you are next to a thwacking great sun, you would not have the big light on. You would turn them off. And what we see is a great use of light source in this film. And we see Graham looks like he's in a Berlin dungeon. Oh, ach die Lieber. But we see that
the fisting happens there, don't worry.
But we see that the star that is the source of the light in the scene in the captain's quarters is suddenly dimmed, and it's imploding. It's shrinking. And then when they get to the bridge, Worf says a torpedo was fired from the Amagosha station into the star, and it's caused a quantum implosion, and the star's shockwave will hit them in, I think it's like 12 minutes or something like that. Something
like,
very short.
There's a not long countdown, but it's the effects and everything they use, because they could have went massive and like made this look a lot bigger than they did. But it's like the reservation, that might not be the right word. It's like just basically to dim it down, to make it smaller, and it has a greater impact because it's this massive star and it's taken out in the way. It has more of a more of an impact than a giant explosion would have been, because a giant explosion would have looked cool, but it's the fact that it's like the silent killer. It's like almost kind of like the snake and death, and it's like that to me was scarier than anything like an explosion would have been.
But the use of light to indicate like that they are in imminent danger because they have been plunged into darkness by the star imploding, and you see the iris of the shockwave emanating from the star vastly approaching the station, and you know they've only got a matter of time before they can get the away team aboard. And what we see is like Riker and Worf beam over to the station, and a firefight ensues with Soren, and they're trying to say, the star's imploding, we have to get out of here. And then suddenly a thwacking great bird of prey appears. He transmits data. He takes LaForge with him. They beam aboard with data, and I love this because this little short scene where there's so much tension, there's so much going on, and like the crew member's like, oh, there's a bird of prey decloaked, and Picard's like, what? Like, out of nowhere, no one imagined a bird of prey. And, like, we've got the away team, and it's like, hell, warp one, engage. And we just see, like, the great thing about this, right, there is not a lot of amazing special effects, like space battles and everything like that. But what they do use just conveys the imminent danger and conveys, like, how they need to get away. When you see the Enterprise warp away mere second after that station is like, it looks like a Hiroshima bomb has like gone, because it just gets absolutely pulverized by it.
Really, but the scene is very clever at the same time, and I only noticed it today because like when I've watched this movie a few times, but mostly when I was younger, and I probably didn't get this nuance. And again, it's probably me being a little bit dumb. It's very simple when you watch it back now, because I always wondered why Soren took LaForge, but when he's lying on the floor, he's looking at the visor and he's kind of like checking it out, and he's like almost like he's thinking of a plan or thinking of a way. And again, later on when it plays off, and when, like, say, he's talking to LaForge and he sends LaForge back with the bug in the visor, so it's almost like he knew this, like this was part of his plan. This was what was going to be happening.
Yeah, he knew that the Enterprise, even if he didn't take LaForge, he knew the Enterprise would go after him because he is now a fugitive. He has destroyed a star system to get what he wants. They don't know what that is, but he has destroyed a star system. So obviously the Enterprise would be after him. So he has taken LaForge as like an insurance at this point. But
why does he destroy the star here? Is it a test for his weapon?
We find out later on that what he does, he destroyed that star to move the gravitational
Because you can't fly into the Nexus. You've got to, like, the Nexus has got to fly into you.
Yeah. So what he does, he shifts the gravitational layout of the sector to a point where instead of the Nexus going past a planet, it goes through a planet. Because you can't fly into it because the ship is obliterated before you get there. If you know what I mean?
Which begs the question: what happened to the ships, like on the Enterprise B? Were they not like
they hit? He got hit by the ribbon.
This is the thing, though.
But yeah, but could you just get the flight plan and just wait?
I don't know.
Well, yeah. What I was gonna suggest earlier is the fact of it kind of suggests that, like, maybe the Enterprise made things worse for the Elorians. So basically, the fact of maybe it's that physical matter, like ships and stuff, well, non-organic matter gets destroyed by the Nexus, but that other things actually get taken into it. So it could be that those ships exploded, but all of the people on board were actually taken into the Nexus. So by rescuing people and teleporting them out of there, like Soren, they were actually stopping them going into the Nexus, whereas they would have been fine.
But the risk is they don't know.
Yeah.
That's
why Soren, you kind of wonder, like, whether, because they were in the Nexus, because it suggests that somehow Soren was in the Nexus when they saved him, because so it's this weird thing. So it adds an extra bit of going, hey, Kirk and that actually pulled them out of heaven effectively.
We do hear,
which basically just ripping up. Basically, Buffy season 5 or something ripped off the storyline from this movie by ripping Buffy out of heaven. And then it's like,
but she was in actual heaven. These are just Nexus.
But Nexus could be Star Trek heaven. You never know. That's the thing. This ribbon.
we do hear on the Enterprise B when Scotty's trying to beam them out that he's having trouble beaming them out because their patterns are shifting in and out of the space-time continuum, and he doesn't know why. And that's why, obviously, Soren is like, I have to go back. Graham.
And this is why Guinan says later that she exists in two places. Yeah. Because it suggests that maybe she exists in a phased version inside the Nexus, but she also exists in the version there. So she's separate, basically.
Science Officer Synoiz. Talk to us about the Duras sisters.
I've got in my notes, okay, you can't see him because of the thing, but it's capital letters, the fucking Duras sisters.
Let's go.
I'm such a massive fan of the Duras sisters because they as Trek villains, they're up there with Gowron, they're there with Wayun. They just keep coming back, and they've always got a plan. And it's a shame that this is the last like appearance of them, but they do fantastically, and they
Mm,
translate wonderfully to this film.
mm.
After having loads of B villains throughout the Star Trek film series that aren't actually very good. Like, who's the random Klingon guy from Five? You know, where he's like, "Hello, I'm a bloke, not really gonna do much."
Yeah.
Uh, but like, these are absolutely fantastic, and it's great seeing them get some prime time. You know, like what are they called? Lurza and Bellator.
Mm.
Um, Le
Baitor?
oh, Lurs and
Lurza
Beta,
and
something like
Baitor, I
that.
think.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
you're
But
frozen.
I love that like Soren just chins the fuck out of one.
That shows you how much of a badass he is in that one scene. He's
Yeah.
on a ship full of Klingons, and he's able to do that without getting his head removed.
But I love the fact that Lurs turns around and goes, "I hope for your sake you are initiating a mating ritual." It's fantastic because we see that they are only there. They have essentially been hired by Soren to obtain this data so he can get into the Nexus, and then they can then use the data that he's obtained about the it's okay you're back about the trilithium to regain favor in the Empire, because we know from DS9 and the Next Generation the Duras family has fell out of favor
Yeah.
within the High Council, so they're trying to use this as a bargaining chip.
Not just a bargaining chip. I think, like, say, with the weapon, they were going to try and take back over the full thing. I think that
Yeah,
was the impression I was getting. Like, they didn't want it back in. They wanted to own the other mother, like the whole damn
Lursa
thing.
and Beta, thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Cartier, coming in.
Yeah.
It could definitely be said because we have it in DS9 where we have the wonderful episode where basically Quark gets married to a Klingon woman because women aren't allowed to actually rule houses. So it kind
Yeah.
of suggests what an insane situation Lurza and Beta are in, that they are held in regard for a long time, where they
Yeah.
are able to have their own ship and crew and stuff like that. So they are kind of like this kind of Klingon feminist icons, effectively. And the fact that they, even when they're out of favor, they still have a crew. They still
Mm.
actually have people that will follow them. I think there's something wonderful about them as characters.
I love that we see Soren interrogating Geordie and taking away
Yes.
his visor, and a remarkable bit of technology. Do you know you could get ocular implants?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Have you considered a prosthesis?
Yeah,
It's good. What would you like to look like everyone else? Why would I like
a
to look?
great, but it's a great
Wait till the next one.
foreshadowing. Yeah, it's a great foreshadowing for First Contact. But we see like the beginnings of what we suspect is torture before we get transitioned back to the Enterprise, where
Yeah, he's topless, isn't he, as well? So oof.
yeah, but we see that they Dr. Crusher cannot remove the emotion chip from Data. It's fused
No.
to his positronic net.
She's like, sorry, I'm not really a doctor. Sorry.
yeah,
I-
sorry,
Which is I'm a doctor, not a mechanic. Damn it.
he's not a candle. He's not a candle. But I love this scene though, because we get this great stellar cartography scene, and this is a great set that they constructed specifically for this scene. It is absolutely, to this day, it still stands up. It is a wonderful scene where they wanting to know why Soren detonated a star and what his main goal is, and they ascertain, as we mentioned earlier, that he is trying to shift the gravitational pull in the region to move the Nexus. And we see all the way through this, as they're trying to do this, Data is reeling in guilt. He is trying to deal with the guilt of his best friend being captured, and he couldn't do anything about it because he was too afraid. And what we see is Picard being full on Picard here, basically saying, shut the fuck up, store your emotions, I need you.
Do
And
your
I
job.
need you now.
Yeah.
I need you now. But then we see the other side of Picard almost instantaneously, sympathize with Data and say, I understand, but we have to do this to get Geordie back. We need to find out why Soren has done what he has done in regards to this Nexus that we find out enters their galaxy every 70 odd years. It passes through on a pre-planned trajectory, and when they input the formula, into the system, they're like, oh well, the U.S.S. Bozeman by Kelsey, captained by Kelsey Grammer, Morgan Bates, Niles. That they had to make a minor adjustment to their course because of the gravitational shift. And Picard's like, why did they have to do that? And Data's like, well, the whole sector's gravitational setup has been thrown out of whack. And when they plan the trajectory of the Nexus and then compensate for the gravitational pull, they see it goes straight through Viridian 3. And then they realise he's going to detonate the star. It goes near the Viridian system, and he needs to detonate the Viridian star to shift it to go straight through Viridian 3. And they're like, Viridian 3 is unpopulated, but Viridian 4 has got like a pre-industrial population, 230 million and stuff like that.
Like
it's just
230 million people. It's like, wow.
But he is willing to commit global genocide to get what he wants.
But that's the age-old question. I know it sounds really bad, but if you can have ultimate bliss or the perfect situation, the perfect being where nothing will ever happen, nothing will cause you anxiety, nothing would cause you pain, what would you do for that?
I already live with her. It's fine. Brownie points. Go on.
But yeah,
I think that's exactly it, though. It's the idea of, like Kirk finds out later, it's a lie. It's this idea of it's like, living in a fantasy and never taking on any responsibility, but never getting anywhere. So the whole thing is Picard is giving up on his chance of having this like happy life with families and stuff like that because he needs to help people. He needs to make a difference rather than just knuckling down and being like, hey, I'm fine. And that's kind of the lesson here. It's the fact of just, it's why we don't just get, stay on drugs all the time. Like, why we don't just sort of like take fuck tons of drugs and never achieve anything, because you're going to be happy for as long as you live kind of thing, but you're not going to do anything. You're not going to actually have a life. And I think that's the message there.
Yeah.
And the fact that Guinan is stronger, because Guinan effectively says, inside the Nexus, it was absolute joy and I never wanted to leave, but that's over now, so time to get on with life,
It's a great foreshadowing when he is speaking to Guinan, where she's like, if you do get to the Nexus, you will never want to leave.
Yeah.
And it's a great foreshadowing.
Luckily his kids are shitheads, so he works out that he needs to. So it's a
God, the kids were awful, but
seriously, that kid, what does she say? Hold on, I have to write it down. One of the kids says something that wound me massively up. Oh God, no, I have way too much to say about the kids scene.
Keep talking, because I do have an Easter egg for Paul about this scene, but keep talking.
No, but going back to say when they realized say who was on the ship, say Guinan was on there as well. And they go, and Picard goes to sit down and have a meeting with them and talk about him. And she explains how dangerous and how scary this man is, and basically gives him an understanding of why he's doing it, and pretty much explaining to him, saying, "Look, we were in heaven, or our form of heaven, where everything is bliss, everything is perfect." And we were ripped out of there. So yes, it hurts. And again, I try my best to not allow myself to think about it. And I think, again, such a powerful kind of connotation or words were used. And again, I'll make the joke, Goldie Hawn was absolutely perfect in this scene. So, Whoopi Goldberg. But yes.
To be fair, I've noticed Mark Cartier is in the chat. And hi, Mark. And he's asked, what is the difference between Whoopi Goldberg and Goldie Hawn? I will happily tell you it is that Whoopi Goldberg is a comedian. But it is just... It's a great thing, though, and you've got to think that this is after their planet has been devastated by the Borg. This is after everyone has lost all of their family and absolutely everything. So it's like becoming an alcoholic because you deal with a bad situation with booze, and then going, it's even harder to get out of it when you've got in that way.
It does beg the question,
just has never ever got over it.
It does beg the question, were they deliberately flying into it?
Yes,
That's never
I
something that
genuinely
you'll ever,
worry about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, what
But
was this?
yeah, no,
Yeah.
and then we get the scene where basically what is it? Picard speaks to the Duras sisters because Soren's beamed down to the planet Viridian 3.
Yeah,
Picard basically exchanges himself for Geordie and says, "Hey, you can have me as a prisoner if you give us Geordie back, but just teleport me to the planet first, so that I can try and like reason with Soren." And they're like, "Hey, that's a great idea." And then they do
Which
that.
is just absolutely bizarre because it's not a good idea at all.
but
It's one of these weird things because the Duras sisters are not the they're not the masterminds they would like to be, but it's the fact of but they know that they want to give Geordie back because they
Yeah.
know that they've bugged his visor. So they're like,
Yeah.
"Hey, this is brilliant. So you're telling us that we get to execute our plan where we actually get to put a a camera on your bridge, and also we get your captain. Great." So yes, they go ahead with it, and then we get a scene basically of Soren, Picard trying to reason with Soren and being trapped behind a force field because
Yeah.
Soren has planned for everything, as we've seen.
yeah,
He's
and
probably the most competent villain in all of the Trek films, if I'm
what
honest.
what I do love though
Like even
is
Khan is meant to be a mastermind and wasn't as competent as Soren.
Well, Soren, in essence, Soren wins. Soren gets what he wants.
yeah.
Like,
Well,
yeah.
yes,
In one timeline.
in one
Yeah.
timeline. What we see is Picard trying to negotiate with Soren and failing, but then we see Geordie coming around and Data going straight to his bedside because Data feels guilty and Geordie forgives him, and you know it was human. What happened to you? It was human, and we see that when Geordie comes around, we see that the Duras sisters are watching his visor, and again, it's right there, where they're just looking at, they see Crusher, they're just like, human females are so repulsive.
I love it so much though. They're great comic relief. You know, they're a threat, they're comic relief. But I just love it. It literally has the most beautiful, glamorous shot of Gates McFadden on the
She
huge
is
screen, and they're just
stunning.
staring at it, being like, "Ugh,
Oh.
disgusting."
Human
But-
females are so
But
repulsive.
there's a loads of little gags in this bit as well. Like when Geordie's walking around the ship and they're getting frustrated. I'm saying he's the only engineer I know that doesn't go
That
to
never
engineering.
goes to engineering. However,
He's just wondering. They're like, "We watched him have a fucking bath." You know?
However, I
Hmm.
have to talk about Data getting back to the bridge and Riker going, "We need to scan for life forms," and he's like, "You got it.
no!
I just love scanning for life forms.
No.
Life forms. You tiny little life forms. You precious little life forms. Where are you? Clip that.
So I want to go back to where Graham said this was a terrible movie.
No,
I agree.
that was brilliant.
I will say it perfectly makes sense in context, but it is cringe to watch.
Yeah.
It's cringe to
That's how I
watch,
feel.
but he's happy. He is
Yeah.
relieved. He is happy that his friend is back, and I will defend that scene to the hilt. But then we see the Duras sisters watching Geordie, where she's like, "He's the only engineering at Starfleet that doesn't go to engineering." But then when he gets
But
there,
I love though what the plan is. Like,
yeah,
the plan is basically that they watch through his visor. Sorry, I'm realizing the time, so I'm kind of like speeding up
yeah.
a bit. But it's the realizing that they kind of wait until he sees a panel that basically says what the shield modulation of the Enterprise is using his visor, and then they're like, "Ha ha, you fuckers!" And then this doesn't
It's
quite make sense
spyware.
because they literally just toy with them, where they basically go, "Hey, we could just shoot the bridge. Nope, let's shoot at everything but the bridge." Like every Star Trek battle ever.
yeah.
You know, where
It's-
the enemy
it's-
fires 50 shots and the Enterprise fires 1, and you're like, really? Why?
It's a good-
Why do they not just shoot?
I do like
straight?
how they found the frequency of the shield as well. That was quite an interesting, because that again is very clever. But as Graham said, the stupidity of it is just like, let's aim for everywhere that doesn't matter on the ship, that
Yeah,
can't
it's
cause
like,
any damage.
We're trying to destroy them. Like they're not trying to take them hostage or anything. So I'm like, why did you not just immediately shoot for the warp core? But I do like though that the shield modulation being on a LCARS panel in massive letters. That's the equivalent of having your Wi-Fi password or like some sort of system password in the office, where you just have it on the whiteboard and you're like, hang on,
Windows L every time you leave your desk. I love though, but this is because all the way through the Next Generation, we have never seen the Enterprise having the absolute crap kicked out of it. We finally get to see it in this. This is like all the way through the Next Generation, the Enterprise was this mighty ship, and yes, it got blew up every so often in like other timelines, but this was the mighty ship. You'd see it do this, or the camera would do this every so often, but we never got to see it absolutely get the shit pummeled out of it. And they really took advantage of it in this movie, where you see that the bird of prey is the vulture. It is picking apart the ship and disabling it one thing at a time. It's death by 1,000 cuts, essentially. But we see, like, when that first torpedo goes straight through the shields into the hull, and like you're thinking, oh shit, like this is an Enterprise, like very much like the Wrath of Khan, where up until that point we never saw the Enterprise being beaten up, and it's like you've seen this ship for 7 years. This is the mighty Federation Starship Enterprise, and it's just been absolutely shit canned by a tiny little bird of prey. And then you just see more and more damage happening, and they're trying to run and they can't, and we see that they quickly realise that, they are going through the shield modulation. How do we fight it? Because we can't remodulate quick enough to do it, because otherwise we'll get destroyed. And then Worf is just like, oh, well, this particular bird of prey, because there is fucking tons of different bird of preys, by the way, as quick tangent. Loads of them, different sizes. Don't know why, ask John Eves. But there are loads of different ones, and he said this one was retired due to defective drive plates. Well, how can we use that against our advantage?
No, plasma coils.
Defective plasma coils, yeah. So what they can do, they can take advantage of the plasma coils and trigger the ship to cloak, dropping its shields so they can fire at it. And I love this, that all as Data is like trying to sort this out, the ship is just getting pummeled. The bridge explosion. The one scene I love is that bridge explosion where that dude just gets absolutely like thrown over Worf, thrown over Riker, and it's like, that gotta hurt. Landing on that chair, that gotta bloody hurt.
Hey, but then we see paycheck.
Yeah, but then we see like
that stuntman earned his money. Like,
we see
incredible.
That the Durasis are like finally target the bridge, and then suddenly they start to cloak, and they're like, what? And then you just hear Riker go, fire. And that one torpedo. Now, I got a bit pissed off because this was a direct rip-off of The Undiscovered Country, from the torpedo to the actual explosion of the bird of prey, which was copy and paste from The Undiscovered Country. It's the very same explosion.
Though, you get one torpedo, one explosion.
It was good. But I love the fact that they did that. They blew up the bird of prey, and you just see Data just go, yes!
that was the one moment that I got on board with. I was like, yes, I'm happy with that.
I genuinely loved the Duras sisters, like their final thing, where they're basically, one of them is just looking forward, and then the other one's just got the view screen in the background, just being like, speechless. They're just like going, oh shit. Like,
I love it.
That realization of going, we've popped up and managed to escape so many times throughout their franchise that they're just going, we can't get out of this,
But this is
for having a dodgy plasma coil.
But this is the part of the movie where everything starts going wrong for our heroes, because we go back to the planet's surface. The bird of prey is being destroyed. Hooray, the enemies are being thwarted. Now this enemy on Viridian 3. And then we see Picard again trying to circumnavigate this force field, and he finds that there is a
weak
gap.
spot.
There is a weak spot. There is a gap. And if he can move the rocks, he can start to squeeze through and stuff like that. And he's trying to do that. And what we see is like he does it, but then it breaks.
He gets stuck. He gets
stuck, and it triggers the force field. And we see that Zoran
and alerts Soren.
Soren
basically, Soren hears it, and he's like, "Oh, you're trying to get through there." So basically, starts firing on him. Which
can I say though as well? Know... One thing I did love about Soren, his gun was kind of like, again, because normally Star Trek's quite
very unique gun.
Thinking it was very
hodgepodge.
like hodgepodge put together, and the movement of it as well. It was very Star Trek, but not Star Trek-esque as well.
Yeah.
It's like he'd made it himself. Like he was
Yeah.
like, "Hey,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is one of my inventions."
Yeah, but then we see that Picard is fired upon. Is he alive? Is he dead? We don't know. But then we go back to the
Can't off two
Enterprise.
captains.
But then we go back to the Enterprise, and like the Enterprise is more damaged than they are led to believe, and LaForge is, trying to triage as much as he can, but then suddenly there is just a coolant leak in the warp core, and he's just like, look, there is nothing I can do. This ship is going to explode. We need to evacuate as soon as possible.
I love the change in LaForge on that bit as well, because normally he's like Mr. Positive, get shit done. As soon as that happens, he's like, right, everyone
nothing
get
I
the
can
fuck
do.
out of here. He goes all Indiana Jones on us as well as the doors are coming down.
Have fun, man.
I love that they actually. This is like a moment of redemption for Geordi, because in Next Generation there's a scene where there's like going to be a warp core breach, and it has this Geordi doing this dramatic like roll underneath the sort of thing as it comes down. But he's way earlier than the thing is coming down, and it's the most. It's so dramatic, and it's literally like. You could have stood there for another minute, mate. It's like it just... and at least this one, it looks dramatic. He just rolls under it just in time, and it's like, okay, that works better.
But we see that the ship is preparing to separate. It's finally a source of separation, which I think we got 2 or 3 times in the entirety of the Next Generation.
3 in all of Trek.
3 in all, the beginning, the middle, and the end.
How many engineers worked on making that possible, like for the ship, and then they're like, we'll use it twice.
So was the separation of the saucer? Was this the first time we saw it on the big screen?
On the big screen, yeah.
The only
so
time, surely.
the original plan for the motion picture was the refit Enterprise was going to saucer separate. They didn't have the budget to do it, but in Generations, obviously. Next Generation, the ship had to separate and stuff like that, but we only see it 3 times, I believe. But they evacuate.
Have a good night.
They evacuate the ship to, they evacuate the crew to the saucer section, and they are absolutely in this mad rush. They get the children. I love that you see this desperate, because we very quickly forget sometimes that the Enterprise is a family ship. It is like it's not a generational ship, but it's a ship with families, and we see this mad panic for civilians and kids, and it's it's emphasized with that kid that loses their soft toy in the corridor in that mad rush.
Oh, that's such a big trope though as well.
Also, in this scene, we get to see Nurse Ogawa, who gets
This is
the only film she gets to be in. Rest in peace.
No, she doesn't. She's in First Contact.
Is she?
She is in First Contact.
I'm just gonna get excited.
Oh, brilliant! Okay, no, I love a bit of Nurse Ogawa.
May she rest in peace. She did sadly pass away recently. But we see, so the evacuation is complete, and they separate the saucer. And again, seeing that must have been so special, Paul, to see that on the big screen, to see this like gargantuan ship just like break apart like it did.
That was the first time
I'll say that.
That was the first time I experienced it. Like the saucer moving off. That's what I was going to ask, because again, I know I'm not the biggest like TV fan like of the series, but that was my first time seeing this. Like I didn't know that Starship Enterprise could do that. So seeing that on the big screen, I was like, oh shit! And then seeing it go into the planet's atmosphere as well. Like, and again, I know we mentioned at the start, the special effects on this movie was so well done. Like, there's movies getting made now that don't look that good as it did on this movie.
The beauty of Star Trek in this period was they had perfected the use of practical models in conjunction with CGI to make it look seamless. And it looks timeless. Like, you look at that picture there, that is a practical model with CGI hull, burning. And it just looks fantastic. When the Enterprise when the star drive explodes and they go into the atmosphere, and you just see like the whole ship just, how terrifying must it be to like be in a rudderless, heavy, big vessel that's just pointing down to this planet, and Data just going, oh shit. Because that just represents the entire audience, because the way that they portray like the view screen of it just going down, and they're going, they are not in control.
it's an absolutely amazing scene, and I love that we hijacked it for one of the episodes where you weren't actually on it.
I remember that.
We
Yeah.
hijacked this scene, but the cool thing is that the next thing we see is that it doesn't do anything. Picard doesn't manage to actually stop Soren,
No.
and the ribbon actually hits the planet. And
Well,
then
no, before it does, it crashes. The Enterprise crashes.
Yeah.
We see that amazing crash landing scene. It basically shows the scale, because we know the Enterprise is big, but we didn't know it was like it could take out half a forest and it's landing. And we see that massive strip of destroyed forestry and the inertia when the ship stops. Poor Troy, by the way, she was given the keys to the car and ran it off within seconds. But we see that when the saucer stops and you see it, when it bends and it does that, the inertia inside where everyone's seats are just launched at the front, and then Riker just looking up at the cracked dome, and you just see that. But yeah, like you said, Picard fails, the Nexus hits the planet. But I love the little scene before the planet explodes, because he detonates the star, fires a missile, detonates the star, moves a ribbon. When the Nexus goes past Picard and Soren, they both disappear just before the ribbon goes and the planet is hit. And what I love is that little bit where you see the planet being destroyed and you see the saucer, and you can actually see people walking along the saucer, just swept up with the saucer section itself, and the planet is just completely destroyed. And you're going, holy shit, they've just killed everyone in this movie.
But that's the thing. That's where this, as I mentioned before, this is such brave decisions for the filmmakers to make. Because in Star Trek, there's been times where they've got close, and you think, oh, they're not going to quite get through it. Oh, they're not going to beat this time. They're going to lose, and they always manage to do it. This one, they actually lose. Picard can't get the job done. Soren is, as Graham said, such a big threat, and sucks. Again, he's not like a Bond villain saying, this is my dusty plan, this is how you defeat me. He's like, no, fuck you, I'm going to blow this up. Go away.
Yeah, he literally is the perfect villain in that he doesn't give anything away. They work it out themselves. Soren doesn't fail at anything he attempts to do in this whole movie, and it's only crazy time voodoo that stops him.
Yes. And then we get crazy time voodoo.
That's it, because they're trapped in the Nexus, and then basically Picard wakes up blindfolded in a room full of children. So obviously he's somehow appeared on Epstein Island. And then it turns out that they're actually shit kids, and it's basically Christmas in a house. Because I always wondered, because I totally.
But that's the thing. If you look back, it's is Picard's dream to live in a Charles Dickens novel?
It's so cliche. It is
Le Bear France. It is the Picard Chateau.
Right, but it still wants to be in Great Expectations.
Yeah,
but this is the thing, though. He specifically says this is a moment of discovery for Picard, because basically he says, I don't know where this place is. It's not Chateau Picard. It's somewhere else, and he's like, I don't even know what this place is, but I must really want to be here. This must be a hidden dream of mine, if that's what has come up. And I'll speed through it, but effectively, all these little kids, and it's this perfect Christmas tree. Perfect Christmas. All the kids are happy. They're all exactly what he wants his kids to be, and he feels so loved. He's got a wife. And then Guinan turns up and basically is just like, oh, you're in the Nexus.
Yeah, because he sees a bauble.
It's almost like she knows him as well.
But he sees a star exploding. Yeah. He sees a star exploding, and he's like, this isn't real. And then she's behind him going, it's as real as you want it to be.
Yeah, and it's that kind of realization that the Nexus is fake. It's not actually real. You exist inside it, but it's the idea of going, you're not going to achieve anything. It's like hubris, basically. But it's a nice little scene. Obviously, child actors. There's all I wrote is, the little girl is a shit. Oh, thank you for the dolly. And you're like, you had one line and you failed it. I'm sorry. Why can't they get a fully grown? They need to get a fully grown woman just dressed as a child just to portray this line, and it would make it way creepier.
I'm gonna find that cast member as you talk, and I'm gonna give him a massive shout out.
But we'll
Oh.
get on the podcast. Like,
Yeah.
you were shit.
You were
But,
shit. Why do you not act better?
but basically, Picard manages to get out of it by sort of realizing that it's all bollocks, and then Guinan basically goes like, "Hey, I'll lead you to a person who can actually help you, because even though you can step out of the Nexus at any time you want, you're just going to
Yeah,
fail.
I
If you
don't
run up against
understand that
Soren yourself."
aspect. So it
It's
takes
simply
so
the
hard
idea
to
of he's-
get into the Nexus, and it's so easy to get out of it.
But that's exactly it, though.
Space time
That's the
continuum. You
metaphor.
control reality. You can do whatever you want at any time. Continue.
You could abuse the fuck out of the Nexus, but no one is strong enough to willingly leave the Nexus. I think that's the reality of it. So it's, you can't get back in, and then why would you ever risk leaving? But yeah, so basically Guinan leads him to Captain Kirk, who doesn't realize how long he's been there, because timey-wimey bullshit. But it's the fact that Kirk doesn't realize, Kirk hasn't picked up on the fact that he's in the Nexus in some kind of dream world. So he's basically just, and this is the strange thing though, where it kind of, we could get like all Freudian about it, but we don't know people's internal dreams. Like, people's deepest desires don't naturally match what they think they are. It's the fact that Picard didn't realize he wanted kids. Like, even with like Renee, like his nephew being killed, he didn't realize that, he wanted his own kids, and then that's what the Nexus shows him. The same as Kirk basically goes, "Hey, what I want isn't traveling around the galaxy. It's not being a captain. It's not exploring new things. It's actually settling down with this woman who I really should have married when I had the chance, rather than going on missions." And I quite like that it does that.
But then, yes, when
Mimi Collins.
is that the name of?
Collins.
Is that the
Mimi
name of the
Collins.
kid?
She looks like a Mimi.
This was her only acting role.
Thank
There
you,
is a
thank you,
God, at
Mimi,
least.
for trying.
Continue.
But
Yeah,
yes.
thanks for trying. We've chuck her in the fire. Just there we go.
Where did you get say, because this is the first interaction with like the two captains coming face to face? Were you did it live up to the the thought it was going to be?
Worried. I was worried about it, because it's like, we've never seen these two actors interact, and it's fantastic. Like, we don't get that many captains interacting. We basically get like Picard and Cisco in the first episode of DS9, and then we get like Kirk and Picard here, and it's fantastic. They bounce off each other really well. They don't steal the scene from either of each other, and I love it. I genuinely love the interaction between these two.
What we see with this interaction is Star Trek at its very best, in a way of, we don't make a huge song and dance about these two meeting. They are in a situation, they need to figure out what they need to do, and they need to work together. And this is what makes cameos in Star Trek, more or less like older Star Trek, this is what makes those cameos so special, because these people exist in this world. These people live, and they do it in when I first watched it as a kid, it blew my mind. But then when you watch it as an adult, you go, yeah, like, Picard is somewhat starstruck, but then becomes to the realization that Kirk is like, he's like, I'm in heaven, essentially. And Picard can just go get screwed, because I'm where I want to be. I'm in my log cabin. I've got Butler the dog. I've got my girlfriend upstairs, and I'm making breakfast. And it's so anticlimactic, because everyone's like, "Oh, I'm Captain Kirk of the Enterprise. I'm Captain Picard with the Enterprise. Wait, you can't be the Enterprise." Blah, blah. And it's just like, no. And they are just trying to grapple with the situation where Picard is very much the analytical, I am in the Nexus, and this is not real. And Kirk is just like, no, I'm here, and this is my house, and this is my dog. And
That's what I like, though, because we basically have Kirk basically sort of, it transitions to another scene, and Kirk is in another of his happy places, which is where he's with his horse, and it's the day that
real
he met
horse
Antonia.
in real life, by the way, Shatner's horse. Fun fact.
Yeah, that's it, and it's great, because basically what happens is he kind of goes, "Whoa, this is the best place in the entire world. This is heaven." And then he rides the horse, and then he leaps over it's like a crevasse or something.
Yeah.
He basically leaps over it with a horse. And then when Picard catches up with him, Kirk's had a change of heart because he's like, hey, I jumped that, but I didn't feel any fear. And he realizes it's because he knows that this isn't real. He knows that it's a dream and that it is just a fantasy that he's living in, not the real world helping people like Picard was saying.
But both of the situations that the captains are in, the first one is Picard with the family. Both of these situations are the regrets that they had, and the Nexus is allowing them to relive it. So with Picard, it's the family. With Kirk, it's the fact he retired from Starfleet. And he had to tell his then girlfriend, who he was going to propose to, that he was going back to Starfleet because it wasn't enough. And like Kirk says, this is the chance to do it right. But then when he jumps over the crevasse, it's the realization this is not real. So
and he wants to, but then he wants to make a difference as well. Because
he wants to make a difference. Yeah.
But just a question, because after watching today, and again, I know you take the piss out of us from time to time with my lack of Trek knowledge, but I was always under the impression that by this stage in his career that he was Admiral Kirk.
He got demoted.
Not referred. He got demoted. I thought so, but when did he get demoted?
Star Trek 4.
4, right? Because he disobeyed orders and
essentially space Grand Theft Auto, and disable and
Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto. But yeah, so he's demoted to captain, and he basically in this scene where he goes like, captain of the Enterprise, whatever you do not let them promote them. Do not let them do anything that takes you out of that chair, because when you are there, you can make a difference. Because as we know with Kirk, being a captain is his first best destiny. Picard convinces him to come back to Viridian 3 to stop Soren from essentially destroying a solar system and killing everyone. They go back. We see the Enterprise crash land again, and we see the fight with Soren. But then instead of Picard being on the bridge on this walkway, it's Kirk. And I love the fact that Soren's just like, just who the hell are you? And Picard's just like, that's Captain Kirk. Don't you read
Do you not know your history? But there's a good callback a few minutes later, and he goes, I do know my history. You're dead. So it's like, all right. He's like not letting them get away with that line. It's like, wait, I'm not as stupid as I look.
I do like though that like Soren has played a perfect game, and he just can't win because of bullshit, bullshit plot,
bullshit, timey-wimey Doctor Who stuff. But the aim of the game is one captain keeps Soren occupied while the other captain gets to the missile control and tries to prevent the missile being launched. They do it. I know we're pressed for time. They do it successfully. However, at the expense of when Kirk's running, the gangway being shot by Zoran.
I will say. Sorry, carry on.
I will say. Well, no, you say what you say first, and then I'll tell you my tangent.
I will say. One of the notes I made that is unfair is that the fight scenes here are two old men trying to do an action scene. So the editing is very quick, where it basically has someone throwing a punch, but it doesn't land and it immediately cuts off. And it's to make it more exciting than what it probably was, where it was two people not really having a particularly good fight. But it does it wonder, like the fact that Shatner does these stunts and the fact that it's all kind of there, it works incredibly well, I think.
This scene, obviously we see that Zoran gets blown up with a missile control because Picard engaged the clamps.
Oh no, we're so close.
The clamps.
Yeah.
Just a question as well, because again, not to argue or mess around with like movie logic. If you had the chance to come out of the Nexus at any point in time, why choose the moment when the rockets are about to go off? Could you not go back a bit further to where it was a bit easier, or you had more time to like stop the
Hollywood magic?
Right.
I will say this is my last tangent of the night. This scene, and we know what scene it is, with the gangway. Kirk is struggling on the gangway. It is failing. We see the rivets pop. We see the bolts break. We see the chain go, and Kirk plunges to his death on that gangway.
I gasped.
Now, this, really did not test well with audiences when they did the screenings.
Really?
This was an outrage with people who watched it. For those that don't know, before a movie is theatrically released, like a few months before, they do something called screeners, like screen tests. So what they do, they get a focus group off the street, or they invite people to.
I don't think Shatner liked the ending to
He
his
did
death
not.
as well.
He
No?
did not, and it is one of the biggest regrets that Branagh has ever had was killing Kirk.
Mhm.
They took focus groups, multiple focus groups, screened the movie, and every single one hated the fact that Kirk had died. Hated
Did
it.
you
But they
ever
could
read? Did you ever
Go on.
read the follow-up?
The Return.
That the Return by William
Yeah.
Shatner. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was
What
a
did
lot of
they
people.
hate? Did they hate Kirk dying, or did they hate the way Kirk died?
Both.
Both, I think.
Both. They hated the way they died because they thought it was very anticlimactic, and what some of them said was it went against what Kirk believed, which in Star Trek V we know is he will always die alone, and he didn't. But they did not like the fact that Kirk had died, and fans rallied for like 10, 15 years after this to bring back Kirk, to the point where it was achingly, and I mean really frigging close, for Kirk to be in Star Trek Enterprise. And I mean to the point where they were at the final negotiation meetings with Kirk and with Shatner and Paramount, but Shatner wanted too much.
Yeah.
That's how close we were,
Okay.
because they wanted that redemption to bring Kirk back. But it did not test well. But we do see Kirk fall, and we see that there's a haze of smoke, and Picard is struggling trying to find him, and he's pulling away the rubble, and we just see Kirk in a mangle of twisted metal, blood coming out of his mouth. And someone pointed out on the Nerdy Up North group earlier when Paul did the at everyone, Kirk's passing in
You
this
mean every
scene-
day? You mean
Every day, yeah.
every
Kirk's,
couple of hours?
Kirk's
Yeah.
final
I need
words.
to do it once a day, bitch.
Kirk's final words in this scene are Sulu's, are George
Yeah.
Takei's. Sweet irony, considering Shatner and Takei hate each other, but
Yeah.
I cried when I first saw this, because we see that Kirk is like, did we do it? Did we make a difference? And he's like, it was fun. And for me to see this mighty hero, I mean, again, guys, 7 years old, Kirk was a hero at 7 years old. To see this hero that you have grew up with, his final words, just looking and just going, oh my.
Yeah.
And then that's it. The music
Yeah.
swells. He doesn't even close his eyes. He just,
I think-
the life leaves him.
I think it's kind of fun though, because it's the fact of it suggests that he's on another adventure. Like it
Yeah.
suggests in those dying moments he's seen something and he's just gone, it was fun. Oh my. And it's as though he's on the next trip.
The next
And
trip.
I kind of like that
know.
aspect.
Yeah.
I like that takeaway from it. That's really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't hate the death. Like I thought, as you said, it would have been something more impressive than just like falling down.
Yeah.
And like I say, with loads of metal things around him. It was brutal, and like it was very well done. Like the way they made it look as well, and it was quite nice to have that thing. And I think there was a little moment between Kirk and Picard where Picard calls him Captain, and he just goes, "No, call me Jim."
Call me Jim.
Yeah.
And as like just like bringing it back, that again, he's having fun, he's enjoying himself, and he was willing to make like the ultimate sacrifice. But and I know we talked, like we just mentioned the Return. I read the book after I watched this movie, and I actually quite liked it. I thought it was quite interesting take from the from going from where we ended in this movie and going telling it like a different story where Kirk is just crazy and nuts, which is
when we see Picard, who has buried Kirk on the top of Vasquez Rocks, Um, um, and we see, he's recovered by the shuttlecraft, and we get one final Data moment where the Enterprise
Oh,
can't be
that broke me.
salvaged.
That broke me.
Yeah.
I cried like a baby at this bit. I
When
cried
we
today, to be honest, to be fair.
when they're looking for life signs and they find one and it's very faint and they see its spot, and we just see Data cry for the first time.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm
Yeah.
broken. It's like, we're all broken.
It's just that
it's
he's
fine.
at the full, because he started off with the happiest emotions. He started out with joy and whatnot, and then he kind of like went into the horrible emotions like grief and anxiety and fear. And now he's basically at relief and joy kind of
Joy.
thing. It's like he gets the full cycle through the film, and he learns how to deal with them, I think. Oh, one thing, I know I'm the one rushing off, but it's the fact of we need to point out Soren's death, where to the fact of because Kirk gets the control pad, he manages to make the missile appear again,
recloak.
which means that Picard can try and disable it, but
Yeah.
then he kind of gets there and he's like, "Oh, I can't actually disable this. There is nothing that will stop it actually launching." And so he does the most hilarious thing in the entire world, which is basically he does something, we don't see what it is, and then Soren basically sort of fights him off, gets back to the control panel and goes, "Ha ha, there's nothing that'll stop me now." And then just as the missile's about to go off, he notices it just comes up saying, "Right, locking clamps are engaged." So basically it's still stuck there and immediately explodes because it can't actually fire off. And yeah, Soren just detonates effectively. And I think it's a wonderful death. We get two very good villain deaths in this film, I think.
Before we see the end of the movie, we see Riker and Picard rummaging through Picard's ready room. And they go through all of these trinkets that he has. We see the game set that he has, and the one thing that he wants to recover is the Picard family album that we saw earlier in the movie. And he goes, someone once said, treasure each moment as each moment as they'll never come again. And we see that they reminisce about the Enterprise that went before its time, foreshadowing that there may be another one. And then they beam away.
And Riker wanting a seat on that one.
Wanting a seat. They beam away though, and the movie ends with another collection of delicious ships for Michael to enjoy. All in all, though, it is an extremely underrated movie. It does get a lot of bad press. It did have issues. I loved it though. For the first Next Generation movie, it's amazing.
It's a great starting point, and as you said, for what to come, again, people always go on and say how First Contact is the best or their favorites, which I can understand. But to be honest, this to me, as I said, it had everything I wanted in a Star Trek. It had all the characters I loved. And yeah, like being a fan of the movies as I was, like, and I know me and Graham will always have arguments. I don't dislike any of the Star Trek movies that came before.
All Trek is good Trek. All Trek is good Trek.
And again, this one just I kind of highlight why I love the Trek as well, because it just embraces everything. And it can be silly, it can be straightforward. And when Trek does well, the bad guys is so much better than most movies that are out there.
Yeah.
My battery's died. Sorry.
Oh, no.
I would say that the only person who I don't really enjoy as a Trek villain is Christopher Lloyd's Klingon. I don't enjoy them. Like I said it in the episode that we did that, but it's the fact of this is a fantastic movie. This is an absolutely fantastic movie. The dialogue is amazing. The characterization is amazing. The journey that we go on is amazing. The special effects are amazing. It's the sort of thing of this might be my new favorite, actually, as we're working through them. It could be, and it's such a turn from what I believed and what I remembered about it. But I think it's because I only remembered it's Kirk, and they're randomly chopping wood, and now they're riding horses. What the hell? It feels like I only remember the trailer bits, which are not what's brilliant about this movie. So I absolutely adored this, and I absolutely loved it.
But on September the 27th, you will have a new favorite movie because we get to review Star Trek Age First Contact. We do. Any further notes before we move to the incoming transmission?
No more notes from me.
Well,
I'll
in
keep-
that
I'll keep
instance,
stum.
in that instance, we are receiving an incoming transmission.
Incoming transmission.
Take that finger out. Welcome, everybody, to the double wheel of episodes. It has been a long road getting from
Now
there
spin
to
it.
here.
Spin.
For those new to Trekking Up North, welcome. Why have you started
We
now?
spin the wheel, we get an episode, right?
What do you hope for? Is it Code of Honor? Good. Paul.
Code
what
of
do-
honor. Code of honor, bitches.
What do you hope for next week's episode, Paul? You don't
Um,
know. Great. Moving on. What we do.
Strange New World.
Strange New Worlds. We need to program that in. What we do, we spin the wheel. Whatever it lands on, we must review next week. But when that wheel lands, we yell at the top of our lungs, double! Everyone must comment. Everyone
on,
must
chat.
comment. Everyone must... Shut up, Beth. Everyone must comment. Everyone must say it in the live chat.
Tonight, bless her.
Everyone... No, she said code honor. Right.
Code of honor.
Are we ready?
Let's do it.
In
Yep.
3,
Everyone in chat, get ready to yell double.
2, 1.
Oh, that's all Code of Honor.
Double! Star
That
Trek
was a close one
Voyager.
there.
Star Trek Voyager. What is Michael feeling right now? Shattered.
I
Cool.
think I just watched this and it's a
Have
great
you
one.
just watched this? Season 7, Episode 11. The synopsis for Star Trek Voyager's Shattered. The macrovirus Dr. Chaotica and Seska hinder Chakotay in Janeway's attempt to restore Voyager to its normal state after temporal distortions shift sections of the ship into different
always-
time frames.
It's always temporal distortions with Voyager. Can they just
Dr. Chaotica!
sort your life out?
it's gonna be so
Janeway?
good.
Oh, this is the first Captain Proton episode we're gonna have.
Yeah.
Oh, this is fantastic.
I'm
Graham's
super
like,
excited
shut up
for
and let
this.
me go.
I think it's going to be great though because this will be the last episode of Voyager we do for a while because we are
Yes.
taking it out of the Dabble Wheel because the Dabble Wheel fucking loves Voyager for some reason.
We have had nothing but Voyager episodes for the last 2 months, and I am
It's
sick.
a good one to end on, I think.
I'm sick of Janeway. But no, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Treks and Trekkers, that has been our review of Star Trek Generations. I would like to thank, first and foremost, my delicious co-host, Science Officer Synoiz, for being here, and our very special guest, Paul. If you like this video, click like. If you are not a subscriber, subscribe to Nerdy Up North. Everything Nerdy Up North does is in the description below. Follow our friends below, especially search for Trek, please, because I am so poor. I'm so very poor. Follow everyone down below. You won't regret it. The Velvet Snatch, the store is there. The links are there. Donate for Nina to jump out of a plane and fund her for having a parachute so she survives. We love each and every one of you. Thank you so much for turning up tonight. As always on Trekking Up North, I want you all to stay safe, live long and prosper, and as ever, Miles?
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 Keiko!